Hello, in this short video I'm just going to talk about key value coding compliant errors and issues with outlets and actions. Basically the connections that we set up between our storyboard and our code. So this is the week 4 lab solution, my week 4 lab solution. And we're going to work with this third view controller, the create new hero one, that has a couple of UI text fields. So I'm going to just navigate to my code for this, which is this one here. And this is a common way that this problem would occur. I look at a variable name, which is an outlet, which is connected to something in the storyboard, which I can see by this circle here. And I realize I've misnamed it. So the obvious thing to do is I just either delete it and recreate it, or if I've got existing code like I have here, I might just change the name of it. And when I change the name of it, I probably rerun the code, find some, I'll rebuild the code, find some errors here. So I fix these. And I run the code again. And when I come in here, we get a crash. And this crash has hit an exception because I have breakpoints on that captures exceptions, which you can see here. But if I had that turned off, which is probably what I should have done, so that's more likely what you're going to see, I get an error like this. It says terminating app due to uncaught exception, unknown key exception, reason, this class is not key value coding compliant for the key abilities text feld. And obviously we've got, if I go back into that class that's being talked about, which is one we were just editing, we've obviously got text field here, no sign of text feld anymore. But what the problem here is that by renaming this, I've caused the connection to the GUI to become disconnected. And it's still looking for a variable with the old name. And I could delete this at this point, and or let's see, maybe what I'll do is I will I could delete this and I could drag a connection from this to the storyboard, and that wouldn't fix the problem because there's still this broken connection. So how do I go about finding and seeing the broken connection? If I go to the storyboard and I find the view controller in question, which is this one here, over on the right of my inspectors window, there's this arrow inside the circle called the Show Connections Inspector. And if I click the Connections Inspector, it will show me for everything in this view controller, all of the connections. And you can see that we have a few things here. We have one, the segue that is causing this to show when an add action is clicked from the previous view controller. So that's a connection. We have 3 different outlets. One is a sort of implicit one that you don't set up, the view that connects the actual view here to the view property of the view controller. And then these 2 that we have set up. One is the abilities text feld, which is a broken connection, and we can see that there's a sort of warning symbol here. Here's our outlet that's in the code that's been renamed, and it doesn't connect to anything right now. And we've got our name text field, and that one's correct and fine. If you ever need to interrogate or delete these outlets that you can't necessarily see within the code, again, go to the storyboard, select the view controller, come to the connections inspector, and you can see these and edit them. And fixing this problem, we can delete the broken one. If I want to set up the text field, I could drag from the code, but after the fact, when it exists, I can click on this plus button and I can just drag onto the abilities text field. And when I do that, it's going to set up that connection and everything should be fine. And if I now rerun, the code works again. A similar problem I've seen is when people are setting up these outlets, they accidentally drag from the same name field to the abilities field multiple times, or to the abilities outlet multiple times. And you could sort of simulate that if you wanted to by, let's say, deleting the abilities connection and dragging from here onto the name. So here we have now the two outlets in the code. They're both connected to the abilities text field, right? So then we can get some weird behavior and not realize that anything's wrong. The code will still run. And if I go here and just type something into the abilities, let's say type Fred can fly and create hero, we have Fred, but we have Fred and Fred instead of Fred and can fly. So it's come from the, oh, that's interesting. What did I do there? Because I thought I had them both connected to the abilities text field, but have I named these wrong? I've just confused myself. Oh yeah, so actually if I hover over each of these connections, I can see that they both, if I hover over these, we can see that they're actually referring to the name field, which has got the name abilities text field because it's taken it from the property name that was first connected to it. So that's why we ended up with Fred in both of these. So if you have a problem like this, you don't need to go renaming the connections or doing anything like that. You can just find the one that's incorrect, which in this case is our abilities one, get rid of it, and drag to the abilities, and now we have them set up to the correct things. Finally, I want to show you how to actually fix that renaming issue in a safe way. So if we did discover that the property is named wrong, and I wanted to change it, so let's say I wanted to change it to ability text field in a safe way, all the connections and everything are right at the moment. If I right click on it and choose refactor, rename, what it will do is show me all of the places in the code that have this name. And this is the code. And then this one here is the connection, the outlet. So if we want to rename all of them at the same time, I can type here and do ability and click rename. And if I do this, it's renamed it in the code. But if I also go back to the storyboard and have a look at the connections here, I can see that it's also renamed it here and the connection is still valid. So hopefully that's helped you if you've encountered this key value coding compliant error due to broken connections. The connections inspector is a good way to be able to figure out those issues and fix them.